begin, let us introduce ourselves.
My name is Armina Iglesias.
And I'm Charis Luciana
And
Mapalwa.
I'm Diane Maria Lapina.
And I am Adrian Adona.
I am Janelle Hernandez.
I am Roshan Sundrayas.
And I am Jaime Estrada.
And we are the reporters of Spanish literature.
Okay class, before we start, let's have a short prayer first.
Please bow your heads and let us pray. Dear Jesus, please show me how to spend this day sharing your love in every way. Help me to be kind to everyone, to play and laugh and have lots of fun, shining your light and giving your grace, sharing your joy with a smile on my face. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here. Ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. Amen.
Okay class, before we start, let's check the attendance.
Today, class, let's have our classroom management. And today, we have is letter E, every boy's mother. Letter A, always try your best. Letter S, show respect. And lastly, we have letter Y, you are responsible.
Class, do you still remember our lesson yesterday?
Okay, very good. We discussed the Japanese literature and those eras or period that comes to their literature. Again, what are those period that comes to their literature? Very good. Those are the classical period, the medieval period, and of course their ancient period. It seems like you understand our lesson yesterday.
So here's our objectives for the day. These are our goal at the end of our lesson. At the end of the lesson, the learners should be able to identify and describe the major literary movements and periods in Spanish literature, including the medieval period, the Renaissance period, the modern period, and analyze their characteristic features and notable authors. Number 2, appreciate the cultural and historical significance of Spanish literature, recognizing its impact on the country's identity, values, traditions, and demonstrating a willingness to explore and learn more about the subject. And last, demonstrate understanding of Spanish literary periods by creating a visual timeline or infographics that highlights key movements, characteristic features, and notable authors. Again, our topic for today is about the Spanish literature. So, Spanish literature encompasses the rich history of literary works written in the Spanish language, primarily within the Spain but also across the Hispanic world. So, it spans in various periods and genres reflecting the diverse cultural influences and societal transformation in the Iberian Peninsula. During the pre-medieval Spanish literature, there are notable writers who significantly contribute to Latin literature, and they are Lucan, Martin, Quintilian, Prudentius, and Seneca the Younger, and Seneca the Elder. Aside from notable poets, I said earlier, there are also women writers, and they are Serena, she is a poet. Next is Paula Argentaria, she is the wife of Lucan, and last is Theophila, she is a poet and also a Stoic philosopher. So there are other literary traditions during the pre-medieval Spain literature. So first is Arabic literature, they are Spanish Muslims. Next is Hebrew literature, they are Spanish Jews. And also last is Latin American literature, these are literature of Spanish colonies in the Americas.
Now, let's proceed to Castilian literature.
So let's have first the Castilian literature. So, Castilian literature during the medieval period, the origins of vernacular writing in Spain date back to the 10th century. So when we say vernacular writing, it refers to the literary works written in the local languages or dialects as opposed to Latin, which was the language of formal and official context in many centuries. So when we say Castilian in Spanish, it is the official language of Spain and the most widely spoken. So during the Muslim invasion of the Iberian Peninsula, Latin evolved in the Romance languages. So early texts in Mozarabic, so Mozarabic is a Romance dialect, were found in glossed Latin texts in monasteries. And also jarkas or short poems with Arabic muwashash. When we say jarkas, these are short poems or stanzas that originated in medieval Spain, particularly in the Iberian Peninsula's Muslim and Jewish community. So these poems were often written in Mozarabic, a Romance language spoken by Christians living under a Muslim rule. So jarkas typically expresses of love, longing, and everyday life. They're known for their lyrical and emotional style, often written from a woman's perspective. Some notable women poets from Andalusia or 11th to 12th centuries includes Walada Laomea, Butaina bint Abad, and al-Kiram bint Sumati. So these early writings laid the groundwork for later Spanish literature, influencing forms like the Villancico and Cantiga. So Villancico is a traditional Spanish poem or song, often with a festive or lyrical theme. It is originated in the Middle Ages and was popular during the Renaissance. So Villancicos typically have a refrain and verses, and they often focus on the theme like love, nature, and religious celebrations. So they were commonly sung during Christmas and other festive occasions. So when we say cantigas, cantigas are medieval Galician Portuguese lyric poem, often set to music. So next in the medieval period in the Castilian literature is the rise of heroic poetry. So during the rise of heroic poetry, these are the literary works that produced or written during that period. First is the Cantar de mi Cid or the Song of my Cid in English. Next is Cantares de Gesta or Song of Deeds in English, recited by jongleurs. So next is medieval chronicles incorporating epic narratives and also ballads and dramas. So these are other notable epic poems and narratives, and it includes Cantar de Rodrigo or Song of Rodrigo in English, Cantar de Roncesvalles or Song of Roncesvalles in English. Next is Poma de Fernan Gonzalez or Poem of Fernan Gonzalez, Los Siete Infantes de Lara or the Seven Princes of Lara, and last is the El Cerco de Zamora or the Siege of Zamora. Okay, so let's proceed with the beginnings of prose. So Arabic had significant influence on Spanish prose, especially after the capture of Toledo in 1085. So this led to translation of Oriental works such as Kalila, Wadima, or the Beast Fable, Sendibar, or the Romance of the Seven Sages, and there are also other Eastern story collections. So Alfonso X is considered as the father of prose because he founded universities that promoted vernacular literature. He also mandated translations and compilations on various subjects, and he also wrote poetry and compiled the Cantigas de Santa Maria or the Song to Saint Mary. Next is the 14th century in the medieval period of Castilian literature. So after the translation period, Spanish literature saw brilliant original creation. So this includes in prose, Juan Manuel's The Book of Count Lucanor and Patronio. It is a collection of moral tales. Next is the El Caballero Cifar or chivalric romance, and Amadis de Gaula. It is also a chivalric romance. So poetry, these are the brilliant original creations. Juan Ruiz Libro de Buen Amor or Book of Good Love. It is a mix of eroticism, devotion, and satire. Next is Santo de Carrion's Proverbios Morales or the Moral Proverbs. And last is Pedro Lopez de Ayala's Rimado de Palacio or the Poem of Palace Life and Historical Chronicles. The themes during that 14th century are chivalry and romance, morality and satire, and misogyny or warning against women's rights. So, these are notable authors during the 14th century: Juan Manuel, Juan Ruiz or the Archpriest of Quita, Santo de Carrion, Pedro Lopez de Ayala, Alfonso Martinez de Toledo or the author of El Corbacho, and Luis Ramirez de Lucena, author of Repetition de Amores. So, this period showcased Spanish literature's diversity and creativity. So, next is the 15th century. So, the 15th century saw a renewal of Spanish poetry under Italian influence. So, these are the key developments. So, Italian style, it includes sonnets and hendecasyllables. So, when we say hendecasyllables, this is a line with 11 syllables. During these times, they also increased the use of symbol, allegory, and classical allusions. And last, during this period, the emergence of women poets such as Florencia Pinar. So there are also notable poets in their works such as Juan Alfonso de Baena. He is the compiler of Cancionero de Baena. Marquez de Santillana. He is a poet, scholar, and statesman. There are also Romeo y Carta al Condestable de Portugal or the Literary History and Criticism. It is a sonnet in Italian style. Next is Francisco Imperial, Henus poet who introduced Dante's influence. So next is Juan de Mena, allegorical poem entitled El Laberinto de Fortuna. And last, there are also anonymous poem, Danza de la Muerte or Dance of Death. Last is the themes during the 15th century includes courtly love, morality and philosophy, and satire and social commentary. There are also collections during this 15th century. The mentioned earlier Cancionero de Baena, Cancionero de Estuniga, and Cancionero General, and this includes works by 128 named poets. So, this period laid the groundwork for the Spanish Renaissance.
Alright, so now class, let's move on to our new topic, which is the Renaissance. Today, I will be talking about the beginning of Siglo de Oro, or the Spain Golden Age. This was a very important time in Spain history for their arts, literature, and their culture. Class, in 1492, Christopher Columbus' voyage opened the door for Spain to build powerful overseas empire. And this brought a lot of wealth and new ideas in their country. It all began after Spain was unified in 1479. This unification helped create a stronger and more stable country, which led to a boom in culture. Class, the Renaissance also began to influence Spain, especially through printing press, which arrived in 1474, and contact with Italian culture. Early Spanish humanists were Juan Luis Vives and the Valdez brothers, and they followed the ideas of Erasmus, who was a famous thinker at the time. Erasmus' teachings also inspired important figures like Saint Ignatius of Loyola, who founded the Jesuits, and Luis de Leon, a writer and a religious at that time. Class, remember that the Siglo de Oro started because of Spain's unification and its growing empire and the influence of Renaissance and the humanist ideas. and it was the beginning of the golden age in Spanish culture. So now class, I will be sharing about some amazing women, humanists from the Spanish golden age. Even though, as we all know, most scholars at the time were men. But these women stood out for their knowledge and contribution. Let's start with Francisca de Nebrija. She was a woman humanist during the Spanish Renaissance and likely connected to Antonio de Nebrija, who was a famous scholar at the time. Next is we have Lucia Medrano. She was one of the first women to teach at the university in Spain. And it shows how women also took part in intellectual life. Third one, we have Beatriz Galindo. She was a very smart woman who taught Latin to Queen Isabella I, that shows how respected her knowledge was. Lastly, we have Luisa Sigella de Velasco. She was a talented scholar and poet who worked at the royal court in Portugal. She wrote in Latin and well known for her learning. Okay, class. So these women show that learning and the knowledge weren't just for men, because women also helped shape the culture of the Spanish Golden Age with their writing, teaching, and ideas. Now class, I will be discussing about the major kinds of literature during Spanish Golden Age. First is we have poetry. These were short poems that told stories of heroes, and they connected the old medieval style of the newer forms of poetry and dramas. Number 2 is the early drama. That is the first Spanish plays began in churches. And the Auto de los Reyes Magos from the 1100s is still the only medieval Spanish plays that still survive. For the third one is we have the historical writing of Dialogo de Mercurio y Caron. And before the Counter-Reformation, writers like Alfonso de Valdez wrote important books including dialogues that discuss the politics and the religion. Okay, lastly, we have the mystical writing. Okay, during the Counter-Reformation spiritual writing group, writers were influenced by earlier books like Dialogi de Amor, which explored the deep love and faith. Okay, class, all of this type of writing shows how rich and creative Spanish literature during the Golden Age.
Now class, let's tackle about modern period Spanish literature. When we say modern period Spanish literature, was a period of artistic innovation and exploration, reflecting the changing social and intellectual landscape all the time. And also, modern Spanish literature doesn't simply refers to the use of meaningful art conveying meaning. It encompasses a broader range of stylistic and thematic elements. While artistic expression is crucial, conveying meaning is achieved not only through artistic imagery and description but also through various narrative techniques and instructional choices. These techniques, including narrative style, structure, literary devices, serve to clarify and enhance the meaning embodied within the artistic expression, making the author intent more accessible and impactful to the reader. It is interplay between artistic imagery and sophisticated literary techniques that defines the richness and complexity of modern Spanish literature. Let's discuss the three most important figures in Spanish literature. The first one is Miguel de Unamuno, was a prolific writer encompassing novels, essay, poetry, and plays, and also significant public intellectual. Miguel is a member of generation of 98. He is best known for his exploration of essential themes, his profound engagement with Spanish national identity, and his unique literary styles that blended philosophical inquiry with deeply personal experiences. Under Miguel de Unamuno, his work and literary contribution of Spanish literature. The second most important figures of Spanish literature is Rubén Darío. Rubén considered as foundational figures of Modernismo, a movement that significantly influenced in Spain. Rubén introduced Modernismo to Spain in 1892, bringing with it a focus on antitheism, symbolism, and rejection of 19th century materialism. Rubén's innovative use of language and rhythm revolutionized Spanish language poetry, creating a new, more musical and evocative styles. Because of Rubén Darío works, it helps many artists to be understand and give broad knowledge about his literary work in Spanish literature. The third most important figure of Spanish literature is Antonio Machado, was a highly influential Spanish poet, considered one of the greatest of the 20th century and also a key figure of the generation of 98. His work is characterized by its profound introspection, its evocative imagery, and deep connection to the Spanish landscape and people. Because of work of Antonio Machado, it helps a lot of people to connect and easily understand their literary contribution in Spanish literature, and also help many artists and children or students to easily identify the meaning of their work that have a deep meaningful artwork.
Now, let's tackle about Catalan literature.
Now, let's move on and talk about the Catalan literature. So, Catalan literature is written in the Catalan language, which is primarily spoken in Catalonia, Valencia, and Balearic Island in the northeastern Spain. Catalan is a part of the Roman language family, just like French, Spanish, and Italian. However, it has its own unique roots and identity. And interestingly, while Catalan is spoken within Spain, its linguistic structure is actually closer to French rather than to Spanish. Let's talk about the medieval period poetry. The style of Catalan poetry during the medieval period in the 12th to 13th centuries, Catalan poets followed the style of the provincial troubadours. Their poetry mainly focused on themes of love and honor, using similar language and literary conventions. And by the 14th century, Catalan poets began to write longer works. Now, their writing evolved from short lyrical poems to more extended and complex compositions, including rhyme narratives inspired by French romance, and these mark a shift toward more abstract and creative forms of poetic expressions. In the 15th century, Catalan poetry entered its golden age. During this time, it gained strong support from royalty and nobility and of course the city of Barcelona. Poetry competitions become so popular when the poets would compete to create the most beautiful and skillful works. And these contests were known as the Joc Florals or Flower of Kings, and they showcased the literary creativity of that time. At the same time, the city of Valencia became the cultural center of Catalan poetry. It played a major role in shaping a more personal and emotional style of poetry. Some important works from this period include Cants d'Amor and Cants de Mort, poems centered on themes of love and death. On the other one is the Los Pil at Libre de les Dones, a work about woman that combines satire and moral advices. However, by the mid-16th century, after the political unification of Spain, the Castilian language began to dominate the era. As a result, Catalan literature began to lose support and slowly decline. And by the end of 16th century, unfortunately, it had lost much of its previous status and influence. Now let's move on to the medieval period prose. Now let's take a look at Catalan prose during medieval period. So Catalan prose began to develop around the 13th centuries. Although the surviving documents are very old, those are the prose base in this era or in this period of time. Prose writing started to appear more clearly in the late 1200s. And in its stages, prose was mainly used for practical purposes such as legal, religious, and historical writing. One important example from this time is a series of historical narratives written by Catalan Aragonese kings and nobles, known as the Catalan Chronicles. So these works describe real events including wars, conquests, political affairs, offering a detailed account of medieval life and leadership. The most well-known Catalan chronicles from this period are the following. So we have Le Libre del Fates. So this is about King James the First, and it is written in autobiographical form or style. So we also have the Le Libre de Ramon Montaner, on focus on military adventures and battles. And third, we have the Le Libre de Bernat Desclon, which is centers on the struggle and challenges faced by early kings. And last one, we also have the Chronicle of Peter IV. Uniquely, this one was written by King Peter IV himself. So those are the major chronicles that time. Okay, during the development of Catalan prose, one of the most important figure was Ramon Llull. So he was a philosopher, a theologian, and writer who produced works on philosophy, science, religion, and even fiction. What made him exception was his decision to write mainly in Catalan instead of Latin, which was very rare and bold during that time. Some of his most notable work include Planquera and Le Libre de Contemplación, both of which reflect his deep intellectual and spiritual insight. I don't know if I read that right, but that's in English term or English reading. And another key figure we have is the Bernet Metge, a 14th century writer known for bringing a more refined and elegant style of Catalan prose. He also introduced new ideas and literary techniques, helping Catalan literature to evolve in both form and substance. One of the most important Catalan novels from the medieval period was written by Joanot Martorell, titled Tyrant the Blanc. It is a chivalric romance that shares similarities with the legends to King Arthur, but it's considered realistic. The novel skillfully combines elements of actions, love, humor, strategy, making it groundbreaking work in Catalan and even European literature. Another notable contribution during the period of Catalan prose was a famous religious drama play called Mysteri d'Elx, The Mystery of Elch in English. This play tells the story of Assumption of the Virgin Mary, and it becomes so popular that it's still performed every year in the city of Elche, making it one of the oldest living theatrical traditions in Europe. So these are the key highlights from the period of Catalan prose, showcasing its growth not only in historical and philosophical writing but also in fiction, drama, and literary style.
Catalan literature, particularly the decline of the Catalan literature during the 16th to 18th century. So as you can see in the slides here, I'm gonna read all the aspects as to why the decline happened. So the first one is loss of political independence that led to literacy declines. Second one is Catalan reduced to a rural and religious language. The third one is prose limited to scholarly works. And fifth one is Catalan survived through folk songs and ballads like mga harana, ganun. And the last one is early ballads collected in the Romancerillero Catalan during 1853 by Milla y Fontanais. So the second slide is the Renuncia and After. The Renuncia and After caused the revival and began with Ballots Grammatica during 1814, Institut de Estudis Catalans 1907, modernized in modern language. And the last one is are the key poets Aribao, Verdaguer, La Antanya Tida, Maragali. And overall, Catalan literature, a quick overview of our part, particularly my part, the decline and the renuncia. So the decline in the 16th and to 18th century, Catalonia loses its political independence and literature tanks. Catalan gets sidelined to the rural and religious use, and its only standout is the Pere Serafi with Cants de Mor, and the Prose, barely there but it's still there, except for Jeroni Pujadas, the owner of Crónica Universal in the 1609. And lastly, thankfully, folk songs and ballads kept the language alive, later collected in Romanceriello Catalan during 1853, and the other one is the Renuncia, and after. So the Renuncia came back during the Ballots Grammatica during 1814, and it sparked a revival in the literature, and the Institute, they used this Catalans, modernized the language, and gave poetry its chance to shine with Aribao, Verdaguer, and Maragali. In prose, there's Eugenio de Ors, but the representation hits under Primo de Rivera and Franco. Still, modernized voices like Espiro, Perequar, and Rodero Redera and Espinas push on. From silence to revival, Catalan's literature, it's been through it all and is still going strong. So that's all on my part.
Now, let's proceed to Galician literature.
Now, for our next topic, we have the Galician literature. This vibrant body of literary works is produced in the Galician language, known as the Gallego, and it has roots tracing back to the 13th century. Galician literature encompasses a rich array of genre. We have the poetry, prose, drama, and more. It reflects the unique cultural and linguistic identity of the Galician-speaking community. From its medieval origins, where it flourished alongside the works of troubadours, to the contemporary expression that address modern themes and concerns. This literature has evolved significantly over the centuries, and Galician literature serves not only as the form of artistic expressions, but also as vital means of cultural preservation and identity for the Galician people. It highlights their history, tradition, and values. And now, let's discuss the medieval Galician poetry, origins, and evaluation of early foundation. Emerging in the 12th century, it became the primary literary language in the Iberian Peninsula. It influenced by the provincial troubadours. Galician and Portuguese poetry adopted new forms and themes. This period is characterized by its deep emotional expression and subjective lyricism, reflecting the feelings and experiences of the time. And so, the medieval Galician poetry is a significant artistic expression that highlights the cultural richness of the region. And next is the Galician literature major songbooks. Firstly, we have the Cancionero da Ajuda, the oldest extant collection from the late 13th century. This manuscript is crucial for the understanding for early Galician poetry. And next is the Cancionero da Vaticana. It's compiled around 1525 by Angelo Colossi in Rome. This verse includes an impressive 1,205 lyrics from the 13th and 14th century. And next, here's the Cancionero da Biblioteca Nacional, or the Colossi Bantuti, also compiled by Colossi around the same year of 1525. This extensive collection features 1,560 songs and reputed to approximately 150 poets. These songbooks are not just an historical artifacts, but they also represent the rich tapestry of Galician culture and its literary heritage.
The modern revival of Galician literature. The Romanticism role. The Romantic movement reignited local pride and interest in Galician culture. though initially not in the Galician language itself, meaning to say the Romantic movement helped reignite pride in Galician identity and culture during the 19th century. Although the early writings were in Galician, the spirit of nationalism laid the foundation for later literary efforts in the native language. Next is the Flora Games, 1861. The first Jocs Florals or poetry congresses were held akin to the Catalan and provincial Jocs Florals, marking a significant cultural event. This event marked a major cultural milestone, inspired by similar tradition in Catalonia and province called Jocs of Florals. Galacia hosted its own poetry competition called Jocs Florals. It was more than just a literary event. It symbolizes the cultural awakening of the region. The next is Language Foundation. The publication of the first Galician dictionary, 1863, and the grammar is 1864, laid the groundwork for the language's literary revival, meaning to say the revival of the language was supported by the publication of the first Galician dictionary in 1863 and the grammar in 1864. These works gave structure and legitimacy to the word Galician language, allowing writers to use it more confidently and consistently. The next is Key Figures and Works. Francisco Añón y Paz, recognized as the first notable poet in the revived Galician language. His works express deep love for his country and the yearning for freedom. Francisco celebrated national and personal freedom. He wrote works that focus on both independence in Galicia and individual liberty. Next is Rosalia de Castro, 1837 to 1885. A central figure in Galician literature, her works in Galician such as Cantaris Gallegos, 1863, and Folas Novas, 1880, highlight the spirit and struggles of the Galician people. Rosalia de Castro, the foremost Galician poet, Gallegos and Folas Novas. She was the most important poet writing in Galician, best known for two poetry books that revived the language's literary use. Next is Eduardo Pondal, 1835 to 1917, a poet who delved into Galician heroic past, nature, and Celtic mythology, contributing to the cultural and linguistic revival. Eduardo Pondal wrote about nature and Celtic myths. He focused on themes from the natural world, ancient Celtic legends, connecting Galicia to its mythical past. Next is Valentin Lamas Garvacal, known as the voice of the peasant. His works resonated with the rural populace, emphasizing their experiences and struggle. His work gave a voice to poor, rural Galicians, the everyday people for the countryside. The next is Decline and Legacy. Shift to Castilian. By the late 14th century, Galician poets increasingly wrote in Castilian, leading to a decline in Galician literary production. Meaning to say, by the late 14th century, many Galician poets started using Castilian or Spanish instead of Galician in their writings. This language shift to lead to a noticeable drop in Galician literary production. And next is the end of an era. The Renaissance and the political dominance of Castile effectively ended the era of Galician medieval poetry until its revival in the 19th century. During the Renaissance, Castile gained more political power and influence, as Castilians Culture became dominant. Galatian medieval poetry lost its place. This period marked the end of Galatian literary activity until its revival in the 19th century.
Good day, everyone. So today I will be giving a general overview of our topic, which is all about Spanish literature. So when taking all of the slides in account, Spanish literature has a long, rich history shaped by conquest and culture and political change. From the medieval Cantar de Mio Cid and to the golden age of Cervantes and Lope de Vega, it is marked by dramatic shifts in style and power. Over the centuries, literature mirrored Spain's highs and lows, from imperial glory to censorship upon dictatorships. Catalan, Gallican, and Basque literatures faced suppression but survived through oral traditions and later revival. Modern Spanish literature explores identity, trauma, and global influence, featuring voices like Lorca and Cela, and contemporary authors breaking new grounds. In short, Spanish literature is a mirror of Spain's complex past, resilient, diverse, and still evolving.